Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Vulcan Inc. Director of Product, Kamal Srinivasan, and Senior Software Engineer, Tanumihardja.
Hello everyone, welcome to VRLA. Hope you guys had a good lunch, and I can see some crowd slowly trickling back in. So we are here to talk about Holodome. We are from Vulcan. Holodome is a shared immersive reality. There's a lot of things here, but we're going to take the next 50 minutes to hopefully demystify what each of these things are. And a few years ago, Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, had this vision that what if you could enter through a door and be completely immersed in the environment. You feel the presence, you get the whole exhilaration just like VR, but without the headgear. Hence was born the Holodome. I'm Kamal Srinivasan, Director of Product.
I'm Mars, Tanumihardja, Mars T, most people call me.
So today, immersive reality in any form, XR, VR, AR, is all about the head-mounted displays. And something that head-mounted display does very well is to put you there from your point of view. But many a times you want to feel as if it's this, I'm in this conference right here with all of you. It feels real, as if I'm interacting with my presence. That whole social element lacks many a times when you start putting this because it's isolating. Hence, we started working on this Holodome, which is nothing but a transport without HMDs. And as you can see, you're completely immersed, floor to ceiling, in a 360-degree kind of a spherical environment. It gives you presence. So your friends are right there. You see yourself, you see your friends, you can clap, you can play, you can interact with them. It feels very natural, just like we're here in the real world. So that's why we built this thing called a Holodome, which is nothing but no special gear, enter into a room, and you're immersed. You're transported to a different environment. It's a fully immersive 360-degree environment. When I say 360, it's floor to ceiling and all around you. And you've got not only the audio-visual part, but also the fact there is haptics and things like that around you. It's a very high fidelity environment. Typically, when you start going to head-mounted gear, with the advances in computing and future, there will definitely be very high-resolution environments, no doubt. But today, to create such high-resolution environments is very hard when you start wearing these head-mounted gear. With Holodome, because of the no constraints in computing power, you've got like all the GPU farm there to be able to render and interact with the environment. You're able to push the limits on resolution. So it's literally like a 8K to 12K environment immersed around. It's shared immersive reality, and we're going to talk a little bit more throughout the rest of the session on what this means and why we call it a shared immersive reality. So some technical specifications, but we're going to talk a little bit more when Mars comes on stage to be able to go in depth into what we've done to create this platform. So as you can see, as I was talking about this compute limitations and the constraints, you can generate the 53 million pixels per frame. That's a lot of pixels, no matter what. And you're able to push the frames per second at 30 to 60 frames per second. So I said 30 only because of the passive content. 30 frames per second is a good metric as you go to start pushing to interactive gaming kind of environments. It's more like a 60 frames per second. And we can push, in fact, beyond that. And there are some of those limitations as you come to how some of the other technical limitations block us from going to a 120 frames per second and things like that. The sphere. Why did we create a sphere? Typically, if you think about the domes that are there, it's either a 180 or 270, or it breaks the whole environment. But if I'm standing here, this is a 360 environment for me. This feels like natural. I'm just here. this is the kind of the environment that we wanted to create. Hence, we had to create something which was a little different than the traditional domes in itself. We jokingly call it pumpkin. Some of our partners call it too. But it's really a sphere. And it's got multiple projectors. The number of projectors is not the key part. The key part is that it's a projected dome environment, and the projection system itself is off the shelf. But how we build the software and the behind the scenes, the stack to be able to do the audio or the video is the innovation that we've done, and we'll talk some more about that. So what's this Holodome, and why did we create this, right? There is definitely the two ends of the spectrum. VR is not new. Domes is not new. Like there's been like some history of VR that was spoken earlier. If you look at the whole notion of how VR, what are the elements it brings this notion of this perceived kind of presence, perceived kind of like being kind of immersed and transported somewhere else. The domes did something really well. It gave you that factor of seeing yourself and being in an environment along with your friends and other people. So how do you marry the two and kind of bring the best of the both worlds, right? That's what we set out to do. And definitely there is some really good nature of what VR does today, right? There's no notion in taking away, when you think about the point of view of what VR does, it's a point of view system, as you can talk and refer to it. Whereas the Holodome is more about the fact that it's an interactive system, as if I'm around and watching things around me. So we've been beta testing this with our users, and few of the users have given us really good feedback, and we're going to continue testing. But before talking more in terms of words, I thought it would be better to show what it is and experience. So today, we opened the preview of Holodome to this Museum of Pop Culture out in Seattle. That's our first location. We call it as preview because we're trying to gather feedback from all our users. We're going to talk about the content at Mopop in a little bit, but we're also opening up a Creators Edition down here in Los Angeles. It's by the Venice. It's at Weaver. And one of the reasons we are doing that is because we want our content creators, especially the LA community has got a lot of you, to come and help us create some awesome content for this. And the preview, we'll talk about the content pieces, but it's open starting tomorrow. And today, we are officially announcing this public preview being available. Mars, you want to go from here?
Yeah, come on, grab that. Thanks. All right, so not to steal some of the thunder that Kamal has, we'll switch gears and talk a little technical. Who would consider themselves more technical here in this audience, just to see? Awesome, cool. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit. So as you can see, it's not really a sphere. I kind of like to call it a pumpkin. So it's kind of a squished sphere. And one thing that we found in our research is that if you kind of look ahead, right, most of our view is out front, and a lot of it's in front of you down below. And so by squishing the sphere, we're squishing the pixels in this area, so that you get you get better resolution in this area here. And one of the things that is different than a lot of the domes that are out there today is that we have floor projection. Again, being the bipeds that we are, when we stood up, thousands of years ago, we could look far, but at the same time, being taller and not being a creature this way, we actually see a lot. A lot of our vision is actually in front of us here below. So what we found through user research was that having the floor projection was a key ingredient to our dome to increase the immersiveness of the experience. But then we had to make trade-offs. Okay, where do you put the projectors if you're going to have a 360 environment? The trade-off that we made was that we put it up there. So we have a small opening that we call the Oculus, not to be confused with the HMD. But we have a small Oculus on the top. And then we have a structure up there that we call the Oculus module, and that's where our projectors are. So in this arrangement here, you'll see 3 projectors that project to the walls, and then 1 down to the floor. The one down to the floor is actually slightly above, ahead of the people. So your shadows are actually behind you, and it's a very, very short shadow. See what else is there? Okay, and then the screen is held up in its shape by negative pressure. So we have an outer shell, and then the screen itself is held by a negative pressure that pulls it out. It can fit about 4 to 6 people, ideally, and the intent of the size, so this is one of the things that has, needs to be balanced with throughput and whatnot. But what we found is this size allows content creators to create what's called human scale content. So when you're looking at what's projected on screen, Doug Baldwin from the Seattle Seahawks actually looks like Doug Baldwin, and actually he's smaller in life than what he is, what I actually envisioned. But that's how big Doug Baldwin is. And so that sense of intimacy that one can create has got content creators that we've talked to very excited, especially when you want to evoke emotive or things that a compassion machine is one, empathy machine is what some people are talking about. That sense of intimacy that you can create in the content is what this size of a dome gives us. There is a modified 7.1 surround sound system around the dome on the outside, and then there are vibroacoustics. I think there's a brand out there, they call them butt kickers, that's under the floor. That gives a really heightened sense of vibroacoustics or haptics based on the content. And we've experimented, the one that in Mopop doesn't have them right now, but we've experimented with all the kinds of different sensors for the effects like wind and heat and all that stuff that can be placed either on top or around the dome. Just a quick systems overview of the components. I'll go through this quickly. Maybe it's boring, but in the center of there is a smaller box. No, not really small. It's a hollow box, what we call, and commodity parts. We have an NVIDIA GPU in there that outputs to 4K outputs to these 4K laser projectors that we have up on there. So one thing that might have struck people is like, 30 to 60 frames per second? That's kind of low for this VR community here, right? Because everyone's trying to hit that 90 frames per second, or let's go for 120. But what we found is because it's already projecting all around you, you don't need that high frame rate. And what we found is also, in our user test, the nausea, I think there was a graph just now, Kamal showed up, the nausea ratings are very, very low. And so we can get away with 30 to 60 frames per second. But we still need big computing horsepower because we're projecting, if VR, you're just projecting what's in front of you. We have to project all. If you think about if you use Unity and whatnot, basically you have 6 cameras going on at the same time rendering. Up there, we have an auto calibration system. And there's more details in the next slide, but basically what we do is we have a camera system that creates a point cloud of the screen, and from that point cloud, we generate the projection maps that are then push through we created our render actually in Unity, and we're using a custom shader that we built that does the projection mapping from the projection maps that we create through the calibration system. And right now, our system works with Vive controllers. We support, at the moment, we can support more, but at the moment, comfortably, 8 controllers. So you can have 4 people with 2 controllers each, or use trackers. So you've seen these, right? People attach them to your feet, or a lanyard with a puck here, or helmets. Like we have a cycling one where you put on a helmet there, and then you're cycling through a scene. And then we have the 7.1 audio, as I mentioned. It's not quite the 7.1 arrangement out there, but it's equidistant. And we're playing around with also then going up with height channels too, and vibroacoustics. We also have the Holo Player app, which is how you would manage content that is on the Holo box. So it's very easy to use. It looks like your typical Windows Universal app, like Groove or Spotify. You manage your content this way. You can create playlists. It supports equirectangular images, video, as well as any of the Unity interactives or Unity games. Actually, it doesn't have to be Unity. You can use Unreal. And that's how you would manage it. And you could have this switches to a simpler interface where maybe it's a attendant who just has to press buttons to play different media content. That's just a bigger view of the media player app. Standard transport controls, whatnot. I think I've said most of what passive. Oh yeah, and there's a REST API that's running on the HoloBox. So not only through this app, but you can also create, and we do have simple web apps that use the REST API, and so it also can integrate with any of the systems that you might have in-house. So it's like it says, it's an easy way to monitor what's happening inside, and also to control what's going on. So like I mentioned before, the projection mapping, we developed with our partners a custom projection mapping, creates a point cloud, as I said, and then we have this shader that we've done in Unity that basically translates your points, right? So this pixel goes to this part, and it generates 4 different displays that go into the 4 projectors. The processing of the warp maps can be done in the cloud or on-prem. And so, like Kamal was inviting, we are opening up a Creators Edition in Weaver here in LA, Venice Beach. And we'd like to work with people who want to create content for the holodeck. So we've got an SDK that is available today. Today it's a Unity plugin. Basically, it's really easy. It's just a camera rig that we have, and you use the camera rig as you would any Unity game. Any Unity developers here? Yeah. So it's just a plugin. We create the rig for you. It does the 6 camera. It creates the 6 cameras so that you get the cube map, and the shaders will create the 4 displays based on the warp maps that are generated by the calibration system. So we also have a controller API that work with the Vive controllers, the 8 Vive controllers. It abstracts all the calculations that you would otherwise need to do for world space as well as physical space in the dome. We also give you APIs to access raycasting. So if you're here and you're pointing at an object in world space, we tell you whether you're hitting and whatnot. So all that raycasting is done for you, so you don't have to do all that math. We also tell you if your raycasting is hitting the screen. And what we found is that's an important thing for reticles and whatnot. And so that's part of the SDK. let's see. So, in developing the SDK, we worked with a partner, Gyoza Games, and they're down in Texas. And this is John Engel from Gyoza Games. And this is a port, basically, of a Vive game or Steam that's available in Steam called Inbound. And so what we did was we worked with John to port his game into the Dome using our SDK. And so that was a good way for us to fine-tune our SDK, make sure that all the teething problems were worked out. And so you can have 4 people. Basically, it's like Missile Command. I don't know if you guys have played Missile Command, but you've got missiles coming into your base, and they're coming from all around, and you can have up to 4 people basically shooting these missiles down. And in our SDK, we show with some examples various normal mechanics that you would have in any game. Point and shoot. We use a lot of that in the game. Locomotion. So one of the things about locomotion is the typical is the teleport, right? Like in VR. We've played with different kinds of locomotion. One of the interesting problems is that in VR you're isolated, right? It's just you. In here it's a social experience. So who gets to drive, right? So those are some of the things that we're still working out. How do we determine is locomotion a collaborative effort? For example, we had one game which is this tunnel spinner, tunnel runner, and so there are objects coming in the tunnel, and you have to turn the tunnel basically. So, you can think of the whole group, 4 of us, having to move together in unison to affect the rotation of the tunnel. It's quite chaotic, but fun. And these are the things, driving, object interaction, spatial detection. Where are you? Where are people in the dome? So like I said, the SDK is available today. Write to SDK at holodome360.com if you're interested in checking it out. Checking out SDK, come talk to us. And so one might ask, okay, this is this big physical structure. How do I develop for it if I don't have a dome? Well, we thought of that. And so we have two parts of the SDK that will help with that. One, we call it an emulator. That basically is for content creators who are doing passive video. So it's really simple. It's like a video player in VR. But it also, you can turn on where the dome actual physical screen would be, so you can see very lightly where the screens would be and where the floor would be, so that you don't break the plane. So you have the screen coming down, and then you have a floor. You don't necessarily want someone's leg to be where that break is. So these little things that content creators found helpful in having a simulator or an emulator to preview that content as they're developing it. Then we have a simulator that's part of the SDK that basically you can use the Vive controllers and actually simulate walking around in the dome, and you can see you can turn on where the screen would be, and you also have the Oculus up there with lights shining in your face. So that helps with the development of content. So right. I'll hand it back to Kamal.
You guys will be more thrilled about the content and the technical. That's why I walked out soon. Hopefully I didn't put you guys to sleep. On the content side, there's a lot we had to learn, right? So making 360 content is hard. I'm sure every VR content producer can talk about that. I can see some familiar faces, some of our partners who worked with us. And it is immensely challenging to go and create content for a new platform. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about first the producing 360 content from capture technology. We had to try all these things because in a bit, I'm going to talk specifically about the 4 pieces of content that we have released as part of the Holodome preview. And for the capture technology, we had to do live action. So we used certain set of cameras and rigs and things like that some things were shot in the studio, was green screened, volumetric capture was done, and then brought back into a sci-fi, very animated setting. In other things, there was a nodal capture because this was something done where we had to take the person in different angles and then stitch everything together in this 360 format. And one of the biggest challenges in content for a 360 environment where you're not wearing a headset is that I told you it's about this presence factor, and it feels like I'm here. So if you guys are seated and I'm here, this needs to feel like a single seamless flow. So your size there doesn't matter where you're seated, looks very similar to me as I'm standing in different parts of the dome. Otherwise, I'm going to break that immersion kind of a nature of it. And that was a very challenging part. Some of our producers here who partnered with us can definitely talk a lot more post the Q&A also about that. But as a result of this 1 year of journey of creating content, from where we started to now, we've created a Bible of like, how do you make this immersive reality content? And that Bible is going to be published for all our content developers. So like coming in now, you don't have to try to learn from where we were. Hopefully the curve is much shorter. And of course, we're going to continue learning. This is just a 1 year journey. There's more to do there. So how is it different from VR storytelling? I touched a little bit on this aspect. So I was stressing on this part of POV narration versus like, this is not a point of view platform, the whole holodome. So as soon as you wear a headset, like you miss the hands, your feet, yourself, your body, you can't see it. So whereas in holodome, it's like you see yourself. It's not about that, right? So you're just looking around and interacting as is. So that changes a lot of things because now my field of view is around. So everything around me needs to be captured. Every detail. There might be, you don't know where the 6 people are going to look because I might be looking on something completely on this side, whereas somebody else is going to look here. There's no turning the head tracking at this point. So as a creator, your storytelling needs to be immersed for every single person in that room, not just one person. And that translates to the gaming also. So when we're doing the SDK, that's part of the thing that we're abstracting for the developers, is that how do you don't have to deal with these intrinsic nature of the dome-specific projection, but instead deal with how your game design is going to be, or how your point of shooting or your zombie attack or whatever that is going to be. That's the part we're trying to simplify. From the second part, movement definitely causes a lot of nausea. How many people have felt like either nausea, tripped, or any of those things in VR, right? If you guys are not lifting, then you probably have been too much in VR, like many of us, that like now you're pretty much like immune to that. But one of the things in 360 is that in this holodome, because you see your body, even when you throw in a roller coaster ride where you're intensely jumping with that like Six Flags kind of an experience, you don't feel like tipped over. You're there. It feels exhilarating still. It feels that presence, but you're still there. So because of that presence of that body, it changes a lot of that movement part. So as a creator, you can take advantage of that within this dome environment. You can literally throw faster and faster at this, at even like crashing a rocket ship, and still the person doesn't tip over as much in that sense. But don't do that crashing a rocket ship. Action is in field of view, right? We spoke a little bit. It's this, it's either 110, maybe 180, but it's here as a point of view system. Whereas in a holodome, it's a 360. And because you don't know where you are, as I mentioned, like it spans that whole environment. So I'm going to have one of our partners who's done a live action content talk a little bit about their take on what it took to create content for Holodome. So let's watch that instead of me talking and putting you guys.
As a creative director at Pixvana, I take a look at these interesting projects and say, okay, creatively, what can we do? And try to use the technology to its fullest extent.
What's up, guys? Welcome. I'm Doug Baldwin, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. It's time for you to experience CenturyLink Field the way I do.
So we're really leveraging the best of this red camera and the best of our post-processing to stitch the biggest, best resolution. The specific technology that we're using at the games, the Omni GoPro, it's a form factor that's pretty small and compact. The camera technology that we're using here at VMAC is a little bit different than what we used in CenturyLink Field. We're using red cameras, and we're photographing nodally. I think what's magical about this project is the culmination of all the technological innovation. Paul Allen is at the forefront of pushing technology always. The Seahawks are giving 110%. The combination of this is amazing to be a part of, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it.
All right. So you saw the Seahawks. I know this is a Rams area, and like I came and spoke about Seahawks. Being Vulcan, if you guys didn't know, Paul Allen owns Seattle Seahawks. We have one of our content pieces which we've made as called the Art of the Play. I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit. But one of the things you saw there was we used Omni, we used a red camera, different places required different things just for that one single piece of 4.5 minutes of an experience. So very challenging environment to be able to do that, which has been kind of like brought together over the last year to simplify it for the content developers and creators. So we've been running it through a lot of user feedback. A few thousand people have gone through this, from the creator community, from the gaming community, users from different parts of the country. And one of the feedback they definitely say, and I can see there's a typo in this slide, I've just copy-pasted and put the same thing on the right side. But essentially, the elements they talk about, story, without a story, doesn't matter what form of content, be it VR, AR, Holodome, it doesn't change, right? You need a gripping story to this. The narration makes or breaks the content. So as a user, I'm there, but somebody there talking, giving me a voice, walking me through this content definitely changes a lot of things. The movement of this, as I was saying, like going in the roller coaster or like making the content move as I'm there, makes it more immersive, makes me more present. And you can add enough movement here without worrying about this nausea or tipping people over, those kind of things. Pacing is a big, big notion, right? So when you'll see a little bit of a trailer at the very end of one of the content pieces that I can show because of rights. The pacing of any of this, in general, what we've learned in movies over the last probably, 100 years, I guess, and in VR over the last half a decade or decade, like there's a lot of that thing that like pacing sets the tone of how immersive the content becomes. And it's no different here because we are thinking about like the throughput, the people there, so they have like a limited time. You can, of course, put people here for an hour because there's no headset. They can stay there for an hour. They won't feel like burdened or things like that. But like still, giving them that pacing for whatever amount of time makes a lot of difference. The directional sound, none of this would be there without the directional sound. So I think like throughout even the VR talks we heard, audio literally makes an equal part as much as the visuals. So from a directional sound perspective, you saw a little bit of this multi-channel surround sound system, but the directional sound kind of adds to how the music piece is produced, or the sports one that you watch, or the sci-fi, or any of those pieces that are in the preview, or even in the game, because as you're doing the multiplayer game in an immersive environment, it's exhilarating to when your friends are there, and like it's a pumped up kind of an environment of 5 minutes of multiplayer game. And the last part of it is the presence, which is what I was supposed to put, but copy paste. So the presence part of it is definitely what our users have said is much different, because we did do user testing from like people who used existing head-mounted displays versus like coming here and trying this environment. And the presence part of it makes the story more kind of immersed, and them seeing themselves makes them feel like I'm in the stadium, I'm in the ground or in the tunnel along with Doug Baldwin as he's running out. So that's the kind of user feedback that we've got as we've done some of these testing. Interactive content. So we're releasing at the Holodome preview the 4 pieces. They're all passive content. And definitely, like as we are looking to our subsequent environments, as we are learning not only about how to make this more, because right now there are just 2 places where you have this Holodome as a platform. And to make it into a platform, we need more people as content creators. We definitely need more of these Holodomes. And interactive content is first on that list to be able to knock off. And one of the things as we've built already a couple of demo games, we've been building a lot actively as a team even today, is that it's an inherently multiplayer environment. As you go into the Holodome, it's impossible to download some things from Steam and convert into a Holodome format and do it, because just playing by yourself, you're much better doing it in VR. That's why there is the VR environment which is there. But think about location-based entertainment where you want like a multiplayer game. You walk into a venue, be it whatever kind of family entertainment center, and being able to game where there are like 4 friends or like complete strangers as you come there. That's the inherent nature that we are trying to get to. So now showing at Holodome Preview in Mopop, I had to specifically say that statement. There are 4 pieces, and we've had a lot of partners work with us. I can see a couple of people from Valis out here who worked with us. Like we've worked with Pixvana, I believe they're somewhere around here too. So there's a sports piece, which is behind the play, Go Hawks. There is a Justin Timberlake music piece. It's called Montana, an immersive music experience. There's a sci-fi piece, which is Death Planet Rescue, which was done by Weaver Studios out here. And there's a Songs of Infinity, which is kind of a cosmos narration, getting into a black hole kind of an experience. And the reason we chose these 4 pieces was not by accident. It was more a well thought out thing along with our partners who worked with us to be able to figure out how do we go from a sports live action to a music, what works in a music environment, both the audio, the experience of being there, to like a sci-fi, very rendered, imagine a gaming kind of an environment running at 9.6K. And then there's a Cosmos piece. So both from the business angle of figuring out the venue, what's going to stick, what's going to be interesting, and this, we wanted to learn what kind of pieces will be interesting. And these 4 pieces are only available at Holodome Preview and Mopop. So prefaced and postfaced that. So I'm going to show a quick trailer. I've spoken for enough.
Welcome to the colonial exoplanet, Erebus.
The disasters, these aren't random events. There's a method and a motive to it all.
I've relayed you the coordinates. Good luck.
Understood, sir. We will take care of this.
You will be deployed immediately. Destination approaching.
We'll take the lead. Number 2, stand by up top. Something's not right.
So that was just a quick peek at a 9.6K sci-fi. That was the only trailer I was legally allowed. I would have allowed to show all 4 pieces. But if you want to watch all 4 pieces, definitely come down to Seattle. And if you're in the content community, email us or reach out to us. We would be happy to talk further. We are building an ecosystem. So we are calling it the Holodome Preview because I told you there's only 2 of these systems, one down in Seattle, and here we have a Creators Edition. And we want to work with venue partners, which we are actively doing. On the content creator side, which is this community, we are looking for partnerships, game developers, talk to us. We have workshops coming. We have SDK available as of today to be able to start working. We'd love to collaborate. So join us and help create this new shared immersive reality platform. Thank you. Any questions? Happy to take. It's, I'll answer in reverse. It's a 20 feet by 20 feet. How much is it? It's a Holodome preview. I said it's not generally available yet, so we'll talk about pricing later. I'm ready to talk to you offline or like later. We're not ready to announce pricing today. Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry.
Hello. Okay, sorry. Your business model is it for companies to help you rent it to all those venues and for content creators, or are you trying the device and with the content that people are going to create, or what is your idea?
Got it. So we definitely want to work with venue partners. The model we are going is we're not taking this to like really homes and things like that. It's a location-based environment. So we're working with venue partners. We don't want to create a venue. So an existing venue we would love to work. We want to give a turnkey system where it's the hardware, the software, the content. It could be specifically tailored for the venue, or some of the content that we are working to be able to put on the venue.
So this is like more like long-term installation, like that?
No. So this doesn't have to be a long-term installation alone. Right now, it's not yet ready to be out there and generally available. We're going to announce that soon, but we are working so that like it's for short-term installs, and it doesn't matter the period, but yeah.
Question over here?
Yes.
Hello. For content developers, what kind of model are you looking at? Is gate share an opportunity, or are you fully funding the projects, or what do you imagine happening there?
So we are realists. There's only 2 of these. And I've come from, my past life was in Microsoft, where we worked a lot with content and things like that. So coming from that model, I understand since there's only 2 of these, we need to be able to work a lot with content creators as first-party content for the near future, and then figure out as the number of footprint increases how we're going to do some of these going forward. But for now, we're looking for content partners who we can work with as a first party. And happy to do some of those behind-the-scenes introduction for some of our other content partners who have already worked with us to be able to talk about this environment and things like that. Right. Sorry, I can't see with the lights on. If any other questions or... All right. No other questions? We're good. Thank you. Thanks for coming for the talk. Enjoy.
Hopefully he says it. If not, I can get right there.